Hello dear students, today we are going to have our next lecture on comparative typology, and today's topic is about typology of morphological level of English, Uzbek and Russian languages. So today key points for discussion: the object of morphological typology, correlation of morphological typology with other branches of comparative typology. Next one is morpheme and allomorph, the notion of analytical and synthetic languages, and the last one is about typological classification of languages. So morphological typology studies the units of the morphological level. It deals with the two types of comparison: morphological or typological classification of languages, and the second one is about parts of speech and their grammatical categories. So grammatical categories may be of two types: primary grammatical categories, which deals with parts of speech, and secondary grammatical categories, which deal with the grammatical categories within every part of speech separately: number, case, gender, noun, pronouns, tense, voice, aspect, mode, or practice, and degrees of comparison for adjectives, and so on. So besides morphological typology, studies morphological paradigm. It classifies languages into with highly developed morphology, with less developed morphology, and with non-developed morphology. So languages with highly developed morphology. These languages change words a lot using different prefixes, suffixes, or internal changes. Examples: Russian, Latin, Turkish. In Uzbek shows, for example, OKD. This means to read. D is inflection of the past tense. In Uzbek shows tense and in languages with less developed typology. These languages have some word changes, but they rely more on words order and helper words. For example, English or French. He will go. Here we have will in the future tense, and it is shown by will instead of suffix, for example, in Uzbek language. Languages with non-developed morphology. These languages do not change words much at all and mostly depend on word order. For example, Chinese or Vietnamese languages. A morpheme is the smallest unit of language that has meaning unlike the word. A morpheme cannot stand alone. It is always part of a word. Here we have Spanish language as an example of regional language. So, polysynthetic languages. In 1836, Wilhelm von Humboldt introduced a third type of language classification called polysynthetic languages. These languages have, first, a high number of morphemes per word, meaning words are built from many small meaningful parts, a very regular system of word formation, polypersonalism, where a single word can include information about the subject, object, and other elements. One common characteristic is that a single word can express an entire sentence in other languages. However, this is not the best way to define them, since different languages are classified by comparing them to each other. Examples of polysynthetic languages: ineptitude. So here we have one whole word, and it means I can hear very well. Or moha, and here is the whole word, which means the whole sentence. In English, I make a house. These languages combine many morphemes into long, complex words, making morphology more important than syntax. Many Amerindian languages are polysynthetic. Inuktitut is one of examples. For instance, the word phrase, this one, roughly translates into English as, "Do you have any tobacco for sale?" So Amerindian languages are American Indian languages. Note that no clear division exists between synthetic languages and polysynthetic languages. The place of one language likely depends on its relation to other languages, displaying similar characteristics of the same scale. So, morphological typology in reality. Language types are not absolute or simple explanation. The classification of analytic, synthetic, and polysynthetic languages are ideal models, but no language is purely one type. In reality, all languages are mixed to some degree. English is a synthetic language, but it is more analytic than Spanish and much more analytic than Latin language. Chinese is a classic example of analytic language, but it still has some bound morphemes, small meaningful parts that attack two words. Japanese is highly synthetic in verbs because of many endings, but more analytic in nouns. Because of this, languages exist on a sliding scale rather than in fixed categories. For example, a language can be more synthetic than Chinese but less synthetic than Korean. No language is 100% analytic or 100% synthetic. General classification of the morpheme according to the role in the word is similar in compared languages. They can be classified as free and bound morphemes. While in Uzbek and Russian they are called root and affixed morphemes, free morphemes can function independently as words, for example, town, dog, and can appear with other lexemes, town, hall, or dog house. Bound morphemes appear only as parts of words, always in conjunction with the root and sometimes with other bound morphemes. For example, an, prefix an, appears only accompanied by other morphemes to form a word. Most bound morphemes in English are affixes, particularly prefixes and suffixes. Examples of suffixes are shin, asian, ipo, in, and etc. Bound morphemes that are not affixes are called cranberry morphemes. So here we have a table about bound morphemes in compared languages. According to the function of morpheme, they are subdivided into lexeme forming and form forming morphemes in Russian and Uzbek. The main function of lexeme forming morpheme is to form new lexeme from existing one. For example, border and also borders, or border or bordera, işçi, işler, işçen. Form-forming morphemes serve for forming forms of the same word without changing its lexical meaning. For example, bodri, bodraya, bodraya, or işçiler, or işçiler. Allomorphy. One of the biggest challenges in morphology is that there is not always a simple one-to-one match between meaning and form. In English, for example, plural forms can change in different ways. Irregular plurals: ox, oxen, goose, geese, sheep, sheep. Regular plurals with pronunciation differences, for example, dogs, cats, dishes. These different ways of forming the same grammatical distinction are called allomorphy when a morpheme has multiple forms depending on context. Comparison of morphological level of English and native languages. For a full comparison of the typological characteristics in the category of the number, we have to find out in which place does this category take in the system of another language. If we take as an example Russian language, we can easily find its characteristic features in numerals, in adjectives, pronouns, or verbs. For example, я беру, ты берешь, вы берете. In comparison with the Russian language, the theme of the singularity of English language is presented just with zero morpheme. For example, town, play, or etc. However, the theme of singularity in Russian language is represented by morphemes y. For example, сарай, рай, or ая, река, or окно, or море. But plurality in both languages can be represented with the theme of the plurality by adding endings y, and a for Russian and s or es for English language. In both languages, there are a lot of groups that are representatives of the theme of plurality. Some of them are alike in both languages. For example, ножницы or scissors, брюки, trousers, весы, scales, очки, glasses. In general, English plurality model can be divided into three variants: noun, noun plus s or es, cups, cups, assistant, assistants, face, faces. or noun plus noun plural with the changes of vowels in roots. Man, foot, feet, mouse, mice. In Uzbek, suffix lar may represent not only a plurality but other meanings as well. For example, respect. Hamid aka girdiler mi? Approximate time. Saat 10'larda geliş gerek. Besides that, it can represent the meaning such as superlative, collective irony, and time. That's all for today. Thank you for your attention.